Dear Blizzard, something has to change with faction balance or it's going to be very bad for World of Warcraft. Today I woke to the news that Infinity, the 19th ranked guild in the US, is transferring to Horde. This comes only a few months after the news that Midwinter, one of the top US rating guilds for a long time, and Temerity, another well-known alliance guild that's top 50 US and has many well-known community members like the creator of Warcraft logs, also both went Horde. In fact, no matter where you look, it feels like the Alliance-Horde imbalance in rating is bigger and only getting worse as Alliance guilds are transferring to Horde left and right. A feeling that's supported by stats, because if we look at the top 20 rating guilds in the world, we see 5 Alliance guilds, and would you look at that, one of them is Scrubbusters, a guild that recently faction changed, literally here on the front page of WoW Progress. The top 20 US shows 4 former Alliance guilds, including Midwinter and Infinity, leaving only 2 Alliance in the top 20, both of them on the Oceanic servers. In fact, to find a US Alliance guild that hasn't faction changed yet, we have to scroll to number 34 in the rankings. The top 20 EU, 5 Alliance guilds again, including one who just changed to Horde. The top 100 shows 20 Alliance guilds, of whom Scrubbusters, Midwinter, Infinity, Security, Familiar with Drama, Northern Sky, Above Average, It's Complicated, and Hard in the Paint have transferred to Horde recently. Of the top 100 guilds in the world, there are almost as many Alliance to Horde transfers as there are Alliance guilds. This actually blows my mind, as even I hadn't realized how bad this problem was. By the way, the same holds true if we look at the top rankings for 3-day guilds, or even for 2-day guilds. What we're seeing here is a faction balance disaster of unprecedented proportions in rating. Okay, let's get into the why, because people will be quick to jump on this and say, look, the difference in racials is small, it's typically 0.2% DPS or so, and in some cases Alliance even pulls ahead a bit. Oops, ignore that one. But the reality is, it's not about the racials anymore most of the time. I mean, sometimes it is. For example, the number 1 guild on our server, Easy, transferred in the middle of Kil'jaeden progression because, as we know, Goblin Rocket Jump was absolutely busted on that fight. But no, most of the time, the actual balance of racials isn't really the issue here. The issue is that over time, the tiny influence of racials has pulled most of the hardcore rating population to the Horde side. And this is really the crux of the issue, because the question for guilds considering a faction change isn't, do you want your DPS to be Belves and Trolls for a 0.2% increase? It's, do you want to go to the faction that now has 90% of the raider population? As someone who's been raiding Mythic on Alliance side for 4 years now, and spent about 2 of those years as an officer, it's been pretty depressing to see the potential pool of recruits just dwindling over time as Alliance raiding loses more and more of its steam. And by the way, if you're thinking, I'm not a Mythic raider, this doesn't affect me, then I'm sorry to say that it does, or it will very soon, because any competitive activity needs room for growth in the upward direction, or it's just going to stagnate and die. With fewer and fewer Mythic Alliance guilds, Heroic Alliance guilds will start to suffer, as good Heroic players realize there's no room for advancement for them, and they'll just quit or change factions. With Heroic players quitting, Normals and Pugs will start to become worse in quality, and before long, Alliance rating will be good as dead. Alright, fine. Enough whining. Hopefully I've convinced you by now that there's an issue where a relatively small imbalance in racials has caused a large imbalance in hardcore rating populations over time. So let's try and be constructive. What can be done about this? Well, what Blizzard's likely going to do, the most commonly suggested solution, is to buff Alliance racials, nerf Horde racials, or maybe even remove all racials from competitive PvE. Unfortunately at this point, changes here are not going to make a difference. As I've said, what's causing the faction imbalance at this point is not racials, but the population imbalance. The time to make changes like this was somewhere around Burning Crusade, which means we're about 11 years late for that at this point. One small measure that could help is some sort of rewards for getting a high ranking within your faction, like the Hall of Fame feats of strength in BFA. We've seen guilds transfer to Dead Realms before for a server first, so it's possible that with so few Alliance guilds left, somebody might transfer back, because although they're top 300 Horde, they could be top 100 Alliance with a quick transfer, earning themselves a little bit of rating cred. So something like this could work, but do I think this achievement is going to make an impact? No. First of all, it offers absolutely nothing to guilds already in the top 100, meaning the imbalance at the top will remain, and as we've already said, imbalances at the top exert pressure downwards. Second of all, Warcraft Log's rankings have already existed for years. If anyone cared about being top 100 Alliance, we would have already seen changes like this. Every guild that's remotely serious uses Warcraft Logs and keeps track of their rankings. Hell, my guild was technically the 3rd US 2-day rating Alliance guild to kill Argus. Does this give us any rating credit or recruitment power? Not really. So, in my opinion, the only realistic long-term solution here is to get rid of the faction divide. Make guilds cross-faction, make raiding cross-faction, make general and trade chat cross-faction. But Wonton, what about world PvP? Warcraft at its core is about orcs fighting humans. I don't know, figure out a solution. Use some sort of mercenary system like Ashran did, or some sort of faction allegiance system like other MMOs. Or fuck, make it a free-for-all battle royale game, I don't know. Warcraft 1 as a game will soon be 24 years old, and WoW is approaching age 14. It'll soon be legal for WoW to have a driver's license in some places. To continue to use the argument that the factions still can't be merged in 2018 because the game was designed with a faction split in 2004, even as the raiding population continues to hemorrhage and sub-numbers continue to drop, would be a colossal mistake. Look, at the end of the day, I'm passionate about this topic because I just want what's best for the raiding population. I love raiding in WoW, and I'm sad to see this huge faction imbalance happening. Keep in mind that for every guild that has enough money or gold to faction transfer, there's probably 10 or 100 guilds that will just quietly wither and die, and maybe some of those players will stick around as casuals, and maybe some will make the change to Horde, but many are simply gonna quit. Without changes, this is going to lead to big sub-losses, and frankly, I don't see a very bright future for WoW as long as this issue remains unaddressed. Dear Blizzard, something has to change with faction balance or it's going to be very bad for World of Warcraft.